Last night's Good Morning America descended into unprecedented chaos when Christine Baranski was physically removed from the studio after George Stephanopoulos mocked theater as elitist entertainment for the wealthy and suggested the 72-year-old actress should connect with real Americans instead of Broadway snobs. But the acclaimed performer didn't go quietly. She delivered a devastating defense of artistic excellence that left Stephanopoulos' populist posturing completely exposed. What started as promotion for Baranski's return to Broadway would reveal something deeply troubling about how morning television weaponizes anti-intellectualism for ratings. But the real story began in the makeup chair, when producers tried to coach her on being more relatable. The Times Square studios had been fraught with tension since Baranski arrived at dawn. The Emmy-winning actress had immediately noticed the condescending preparation. Producers handed her talking points about making theater accessible and avoiding theatrical jargon. They prepared a segment comparing Broadway ticket prices to real family expenses like groceries and gas. A makeup artist later revealed overhearing Stephanopoulos say, "These theater people live in a bubble. Let's pop it." Therefore, the anti-theater bias was deliberate from the start. But what they didn't realize was that Baranski had spent 5 decades defending artistic excellence against exactly this kind of reductive populism. The warm-up comedian had been specifically doing jokes about pretentious actors and people who pronounce theater the ata. But Baranski sat backstage, reviewing her notes with the same meticulous preparation she'd bring to Sondheim. The show began with Stephanopoulos delivering his trademark mix of political news and populist commentary. He made several pointed remarks about coastal elites and the disconnect between artists and average Americans. He discussed Broadway's outrageous prices and questioned who theater really serves. Robin Roberts looked increasingly uncomfortable, while Michael Strahan maintained careful neutrality. But Stephanopoulos seemed energized by his class warfare angle, making jokes about people who think speaking in iambic pentameter makes them superior. Therefore, by the time they announced Baranski, he'd already framed her as an out-of-touch elitist. "Please welcome Broadway's Christine Baranski," Stephanopoulos announced, deliberately emphasizing Broadway with subtle mockery. Baranski entered with perfect posture, her silver hair elegantly styled, her presence immediately commanding respect. The audience applauded warmly, many standing for the beloved actress. She greeted Robin and Michael graciously, but when she reached Stephanopoulos, her expression cooled noticeably. "Christine, before we discuss your new play, let's address the elephant in the room. Broadway tickets cost hundreds of dollars. How do you justify that to families struggling to buy groceries?" Stephanopoulos asked immediately. Baranski studied him for a moment. "I don't set ticket prices, George. But I'm curious, what did you pay for your Hamptons house? Should we discuss accessibility there?" She replied calmly. "That's not the same," he started. "Isn't it? You're questioning my profession's accessibility while living in multiple homes worth millions. The hypocrisy is staggering," Baranski observed. Therefore, the confrontation was immediate. Stephanopoulos tried to recover. "I'm talking about theater being elitist. No, you're performing populism while being an elite yourself. You make $15 million a year. You vacation in Martha's Vineyard. You send your children to private schools. But you want to lecture me about elitism? Please," Baranski interrupted. She stood up, her theatrical training evident in how she commanded the space. "You know what's truly elitist? Assuming regular Americans can't appreciate complex art. Thinking they only deserve simple entertainment. You're not defending the masses, George. You're insulting them," she said. "Theater doesn't speak to regular people," Stephanopoulos claimed. "Hamilton sold millions of tickets. Dear Evan Hansen toured Middle America. Local theaters thrive in small towns. You don't know what you're talking about because you've never actually investigated. You just repeat talking points," Baranski replied. But then she revealed something devastating. "Your own mother was a theater major, George. She performed in community theater for 30 years. Did you know I worked with her once? She understood theater's value." "What happened to you?" she asked. Stephanopoulos went pale. "That's not relevant." "It's entirely relevant. You're betraying your own family's artistic legacy for cheap populist points. Your mother would be ashamed, Baranski said. Therefore, she moved closer to his desk. You want to talk about real Americans? I've performed in 50 cities across this country. I've seen auto workers cry at death of a salesman. I've watched farmers give standing ovations to our town. Don't tell me theater doesn't connect with people. You're the one who's disconnected, she continued. The audience was riveted. But Baranski pulled out her phone. Let me show you something. These are letters from students who saw theater through our outreach programs. Kids from inner cities, rural areas, immigrant families. We bring theater to them for free. What have you done for accessibility besides complain? She asked. This isn't about me, Stephanopoulos protested. It's entirely about you. You're using class resentment to score points while doing nothing to actually help. That's not journalism. That's demagoguery, Baranski observed. But then she delivered even more damaging information. Your show charges $500 for VIP audience tickets. You sell meet and greets for thousands. You monetize access just like Broadway, but without creating any actual art. Who's really the elitist? She asked. Michael Strahan surprisingly spoke up. She has a point, George. Not now, Michael, Stephanopoulos snapped. Therefore, Baranski seized on that. There it is. You silence anyone who disagrees. You're not having a discussion. You're performing a takedown. But you picked the wrong target, she said. She turned to address the audience directly. Don't let anyone tell you that excellence is elitism. Don't let them say that aspiring to see great art makes you a snob. You deserve beauty, complexity, and transcendence. Not just from theater, but from television too, she told them. Security, Stephanopoulos called out suddenly. You're removing me for defending theater? How wonderfully anti-intellectual of you, Baranski said with theatrical irony. As security approached, she raised her hand. I'll leave. But first, let me perform something for this audience you claim can't appreciate theater, she said. Without waiting for permission, she launched into Lady Macbeth's out, damned spot soliloquy. Her performance was mesmerizing. The audience was transfixed. Even security stopped moving. But when she finished with, what's done cannot be undone, looking directly at Stephanopoulos, the meaning was clear. Get her out, Stephanopoulos demanded, his face red. Therefore, as she was being escorted, Baranski called out, to everyone watching, don't let them convince you that excellence is your enemy. Don't let them use your economic struggles to justify cultural emptiness. You deserve better than condescension disguised as populism, she said. The studio erupted. The audience gave her a standing ovation even as she was removed. Many booed Stephanopoulos. The show cut to commercial in complete disorder. Within minutes, #Baranski Defends Art was trending globally. The video of her performing Shakespeare while being removed became instantly iconic. But the conversation transcended typical viral moments. It became about whether populism required rejecting artistic excellence. Theater communities nationwide rallied behind Baranski. But surprisingly, working-class audiences also supported her. They resented Stephanopoulos' assumption that they couldn't appreciate complex art. The populist pose had backfired. ABC faced immediate backlash. Arts organizations condemned the anti-intellectual bias. Sponsors supporting cultural programming withdrew. The financial and reputational damage was severe. Stephanopoulos attempted damage control the next morning. I support all forms of artistic expression, he said unconvincingly. But the damage was irreversible. His credibility as a man of the people was exposed as performance. Meanwhile, Baranski's Broadway show saw massive interest. But more importantly, regional theaters reported increased attendance. People sought out theater specifically because it had been attacked. The Streisand effect was in full force. Therefore, the incident sparked a national conversation about art's role in democracy. The assumption that excellence was inherently elitist was challenged. The difference between making art accessible and dumbing it down became clear. Baranski released an elegant statement. I was removed for suggesting that all Americans deserve access to excellent art. If that's controversial, we need to examine what we're really defending. Excellence isn't the enemy of equality. Mediocrity posing as populism is, she said. Years later, When Baranski won her 5th Emmy at 75, she referenced the incident. "To those who think artistic excellence is elitism, I dedicate this to you. Beauty isn't reserved for the wealthy. It's a human right," she said. But that morning, all anyone saw was Christine Baranski being forcibly removed for defending theater. She'd been kicked off for insisting art mattered to everyone. The image of her performing Shakespeare while being escorted out became legendary. At 72, she'd stood against the weaponization of economic anxiety to justify cultural poverty. She'd exposed how fake populists used real struggles to attack excellence rather than expand access to it. Stephanopoulos had tried to score populist points by attacking theater. Instead, he'd been exposed as an elitist playing at populism, someone who insulted the very people he claimed to defend by assuming they couldn't appreciate complexity. The woman who'd mastered Sondheim and Shakespeare had given morning television a performance they'd never forget. And she'd done it while being physically removed, turning her ejection into her greatest entrance and exit ever.